Welcome, welcome, welcome. And to all who are watching, enter if you dare. Blood-Curdling Chronicles, true stories, real fear, 700 people. That's how many have died in a single lake in Georgia since 1950. Not a flood, not a disaster. A lake people visit on summer weekends. Some of their bodies were never found. Survivors describe invisible hands, cold, deliberate, pulling them under. A woman in a blue dress walks the lakebed at night and she is always smiling. And beneath the surface, 30 feet down, sits an entire community. Church, homes, graves, lives. That the government buried alive in 1956. This is Lake Lanier, and this is the story of what it refuses to let go. Lake Lanier sits in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, about 50 miles north of Atlanta. It stretches across 59 square miles. On a bright Saturday in June, it's full of boats, jet skis, laughter, families on the shore, children in the water. The brochures call it a jewel of the South, a recreational paradise. The emergency responders call it something else entirely. Lanier is fed by the Chattahoochee River. Its water is murky. Visibility beneath the surface, sometimes less than 3 feet. Currents run in unexpected directions. Underwater shelves drop away without warning. And 30 feet down in the permanent darkness, old structures reach upward like hands. Lake Lanier did not exist in 1955. What was there instead would take us 60 years to fully reckon with. In the early 1950s, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers announced a plan to dam the Chattahoochee River for flood control and to supply Atlanta's growing population with water. The dam would flood the valley. Everything in it would be submerged. Everything, including the town of Oscarville, Georgia. Oscarville was a thriving black community. Over 250 families, farmers, teachers, business owners, a church that had stood for generations, a cemetery where ancestors were buried. They were told to leave. They were given compensation far below market value, and in many cases, they were simply told to go. Not all the structures were demolished before the waters rose. They flooded the houses, they flooded the roads, they flooded the graves. In 1956, the Buford Dam gates closed, and Oscarville disappeared beneath 60 feet of water. The families who lived there received no formal memorial, no acknowledgement, just gone, erased. Locals say the lake has been angry ever since. The deaths began almost immediately. In 1958, just 2 years after the lake filled, Delia Parker Young and Susie Roberts were driving across Brown's Bridge when their car plunged into the water. Both women drowned. Their bodies were recovered. But their car, it stayed at the bottom for 32 years. When it was finally found in 1990, the skeleton of one woman was still in the driver's seat. That car became the origin point of the most famous ghost story at Lake Lanier. Witnesses began reporting a woman, blue dress, long hair, standing in the shallows near Brown's Bridge at night. Always still, always watching. Some say she's combing her hair. Some say she turns to look at you. Nobody who's seen her up close has wanted to describe what her face looks like. By the 1980s, Lake Lanier had accumulated a body count that no recreational lake anywhere in America could match. And the pattern was strange. Not just drownings, which happen everywhere, but disappearances. Bodies that sank and were never recovered. Victims in shallow water who should have survived. Here is what the park rangers won't put on a sign. Survivors, people who nearly drowned and lived to describe it, have used the exact same language, over and over in separate incidents separated by decades. They describe hands, cold, below the surface, gripping their ankles and pulling downward. Every single one of them thought, in that moment, that a person had grabbed them. There was never anyone there. I want to pause here because what's happening at Lake Lanier isn't just a ghost story. It's something older. It's about what happens when we erase a community, when we drown an entire world of people and then tell ourselves we've moved on. The families of Oscarville didn't have a choice. Their grief didn't go anywhere. It just went under. And year after year, the lake takes. Park rangers report that certain areas, particularly the old town sites, account for disproportionate numbers of the drowning incidents. They can't explain why. Scientists cite undertows, drop-offs, poor visibility. And all of that is true, but it doesn't explain the hands. In 2003, a swimmer named Calvin was pulled from the lake near Ballas Creek. He had gone under in 8 feet of water and was unconscious when rescuers reached him. When he came to, the first thing he said was, "Something grabbed me. From below, I felt its fingers." In 2015, a teenage girl told emergency responders she had seen a woman standing on the lake floor beneath her. The water at that spot was 19 feet deep. The woman, she said, was smiling upward. Divers who have recovered bodies from the deeper sections of the lake report something that they don't include in their official reports. In certain areas, near what would have been the center of Oscarville, there is a cold, a specific, localized cold, that cannot be explained by thermocline alone. One rescue diver, speaking anonymously, said, "You feel it before you see it. The water changes, and then you're in the middle of what used to be someone's living room, and you don't want to stay." In 2025 alone, just this past year, Lake Lanier claimed at least 8 lives. 8 people who went to a lake on a sunny day and did not come home. 2 of those bodies were never recovered. They are still down there. What makes Lake Lanier truly disturbing, beyond the deaths, beyond the ghost stories, is what the Army Corps of Engineers knew and didn't say. Before the flooding, they conducted surveys. They knew exactly which buildings still stood in the valley. They knew which cemetery plots had never been relocated. There are graves, documented, recorded in the Army Corps surveys, that were simply never exhumed. They calculated the cost of relocating them and decided it was too expensive. Those graves are still there, 65 feet underwater. The headstones, the coffins, the remains of the dead, left exactly where the living buried them. There is a word for what Lake Lanier is built on. Archaeologists call it a sacrifice zone, a place where the physical record of a community is intentionally destroyed. Most sacrifice zones are ancient history. Lake Lanier is 65 years old. Researchers who study the lake's death patterns have noted something that the Tourism Bureau doesn't advertise. Incidents cluster. Drownings, close calls, inexplicable accidents. They concentrate in specific GPS coordinates, the same coordinates year after year. Those coordinates correspond to the center of Oscarville. In 2023, the state of Georgia formally acknowledged the history of Oscarville in a legislative resolution. The language was careful, measured. It acknowledged the displacement. It acknowledged the cultural loss. It did not acknowledge the graves still underwater. Descendants of Oscarville families have lobbied for a memorial, something at the water's edge to mark what was taken. As of this recording, no permanent memorial exists. The lake continues to be one of the most visited recreational destinations in the southeastern United States. 14 million visitors a year, 14 million people swimming over a drowned town, over unmarked graves, over the bones of people who were never given permission to leave. There is no resolution to this story. That's what makes it horror. Ghost stories require a source, a grief so unresolved, so violently unacknowledged, that it seeps into the physical world and refuses to dissipate. Lake Lanier has that grief in abundance. The lake will be full of boats next weekend. Children will jump from docks, families will grill on the shore, and 30 feet below them, in the cold and dark, Oscarville is still there. And according to the survivors, the ones who felt those hands, it knows you're there too. The archives have noted one additional detail for those who visit. The woman in the blue dress is most often seen at dusk, right around the time the lake goes dark, and she is always looking up. If this story kept you up at night, you're in the right place. The archivist will be back with a new true horror story every week. Subscribe to Blood-Curdling Chronicles, and if you dare, leave a comment below with your own unexplained experience. We read every single one.
If you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to be notified of all of our future videos.